Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second meeting of the Education Committee, Joint Education. We're happy to see you all. And hopefully you've had a great summer, because I hate to tell you, but it's about gone. So anyway, welcome to Casper, and let's go ahead and see if Mr. Co-Chairman, you have any remarks before we start with roll call? No? He's going to be quiet to start with, so let's go ahead and start with roll call, Ashley.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. For Joint Education, August 21st, 2025, Senator Brennan. Here. Senator Olson.
Here.
Senator Rothfuss. Here. Senator Scott.
Here.
Representative Bratton.
Here.
Representative Erickson.
Here.
Representative Guggenmoss.
Here.
Representative Kelly.
Here.
Representative Lawley.
Here.
Representative Singh.
Here.
Representative Strzok.
Here.
Representative Williams.
Here.
Co-Chairman Andrew.
Here.
Co-Chairwoman Schuler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ashley. Just a few housekeeping items. As usual, we have to talk a little bit about our decorum. I don't know that we've ever had an issue with education. I think we all are very respectful, but still, they asked us if we would kind of just remind everybody to be respectful to each other. I don't know that we'll have a riot here or anything. We do have some fun topics, but anyway, we just ask that you be respectful. Try to keep your comments fairly succinct if you can, and make sure that we send those through the chairman. Other than that, we'll move on, and I would ask for, entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Okay, all right. It's been moved by Senator Rothfuss, seconded by, I think, Representative Lawley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those have been accepted. Okay, with that, I believe we'll start right in, unless our good LSO has anything else they want to bring up before we start. Anything exciting that you want to bring forth? Okay, great. Well, we're going to start right in with higher education. And so we're going to bring up our experts here and tell us what they know about each of these things. And Ms. Hytrek says that we're going to get sick of her, but I don't think that's true. So anyway, are we going to go with Tanya, or are we going to go with Ms. Hytrek? What do you prefer? Tanya's fine. Okay. Let's go with Tanya and Matt then. Okay. All right. Welcome.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, my name is Tanya Heitrick. I'm the Operations Administrator for the Legislative Service Office. I'm here this morning to talk to you about several bill drafts that you requested at your last meeting. The first bill draft, we'll just jump right into it, is 26 LSO 0094 Working Draft 0.6. This is the Hathaway Lump Sum Scholarship. The committee requested at the last meeting that 21 LSO 0064 that has the same name as this particular bill draft be resurrected. I would note at the outset there are substantial repealers in this bill. At the end, I think there are maybe over 10 pages of notes about repealing. And then also, while it does provide a lump sum, this bill draft and the prior bill draft that we resurrected does do other items, including the ability to utilize the scholarship for 20 years. It eliminates the satisfactory academic progress requirements with the exception of one scholarship, and I'll get to that later. And then also, it eliminates the requirement to enroll for 6 hours, again, with the exception of one scholarship, which I'll discuss later. I would draw the committee's attention to the staff comment on page 2, lines 1 through 5. In the event that you enact 26 LSO 0096, which we'll also discuss, which is the Hathaway use of the Hathaway Scholarship at private institutions. Both of these bills amend the Hathaway Scholarship in a fairly significant manner. And so in the event they're both enacted, the committee needs to think through how they'll conform those two bills together. Moving on, page 2, line 21 through page 3, line 23 amends the definitions contained in 2116-1301 to operationalize the lump sum awards and make other conforming amendments. Page 4, line 2 through page 5, line 15, amends 2116, 1303, subsections B and D to authorize the use of the scholarship for 20 years after the student's initial eligibility has been determined. Moving on to page 5, line 17 through page 7, line 5. This amends the Hathaway Opportunity, Performance, and Honor Scholarships to operationalize the lump sums. It eliminates the per semester awards. You'll note the numbers there on lines 8 and 9, 18 and 19 on page 6, and then on the top of page 7. Those are the amounts that were awarded on a per semester basis aggregated. The subsection 8 on page 7, lines 7 through 14, this is where it eliminates the requirement for students to be enrolled in not less than or in at least 6 hours. On the bottom, page 7, recall that the Provisional Opportunities Scholarship is a separate scholarship. It's called out in a different statutory section. And you'll note on to page 8, the same type of amendment is made on lines 10 and 11. I would also draw the committee's attention to the staff comment on page 8, lines 12 through 25. It's a policy decision for the committee, but the provisional opportunity and the opportunities scholarship under this bill draft will be the same amount. And so they'll have different qualifications. The provisional opportunity, you can utilize the CTE assessment, and for the opportunities scholarship in the prior statutory section, it's based on ACT, and then the GPA requirements are different for those as well. The committee may want to consider combining those because it's the same amount. That's obviously a policy decision, but seems prudent if they're the same amount to consider one scholarship. And also I would note in the repealers, the provisional opportunity scholarship was really for the purpose of attending a community college and then moving on to a college experience. And now with the lump sum, you could utilize that at any eligible institution. Moving on to the amendments on, let's see, page 9, line 7. This is the need-based scholarship. And you'll note that there are substantial revisions to this on page 9 through 11. And that's required because you have to operationalize this on a per semester basis. And so you have to draw in those amounts that were previously in the honors, the opportunity, the performance scholarships. And it would note for this particular scholarship, there is a requirement that you are enrolled in at least 6 hours. That's the only way the LSO could operationalize it. Certainly, if committee members have other ideas on how to do that, we're open to those. We did discuss it extensively in the office. Page 12, line 9 through page 13, line 3. These are technical amendments to the success curriculum requirements. The dates are obsolete, and so it seems like a prudent decision to eliminate those if you're amending the program. On to page 13, line 5 through page 14, line 18. The first amendment in subsection B is just a conforming amendment. We don't use rules and regulations in the statute any longer. We just say rules. Anytime that we see that in a draft, we eliminate and regulations. And then on the bottom of page 13, on line 20, and then again on page 14, line 6, this is where you'll see the ability to utilize the scholarship for 20 years after your initial date of eligibility. Page 14, line 20 through page 15, line 18, this amends the scholarship amounts, allowing students to use all or a portion of the scholarship, and charges the Department of Education with sort of the accounting feature of that, and also certification on a semester basis, who's eligible for how much and how much have they actually utilized. Page 15, line 20, through page 16, line 10. This amends the legislative oversight and authority. It just simply states that on lines 4 through 7 on page 16, that scholarships awarded under this article can only be utilized for the purposes intended by the scholarship. I think that was actually in one of the repealed sections. Seems important provision, so we just added it here. Amendments on page 16, line 9, through page 17, line 17. Recall, this is a separate and distinct scholarship category. It was created after the Hathaway Scholarship. The intent of this scholarship is to allow, I think, 2 students to receive the Hathaway Scholarship that do not reside in Wyoming and that graduated from an out-of-state school. Again, because the provisions were repealed in prior sections, it's required to call out those satisfactory academic progress requirements. It's a policy decision whether the legislature wants to eliminate those or not. This was brought forward from the prior bill draft that was resurrected. And I would note, sort of a side note, this scholarship has never been operational. There's never been any money appropriated to it. It could be a policy consideration to simply repeal it, but that's a decision for you all. I think that's noted in the staff comment on the bottom of page 17. Page 18, line 4 through page 19, line 5. This amends the Wyoming Works Scholarship to specify the actual amounts being awarded because the prior language referred to the Hathaway Scholarship. And so it really is a conforming amendment because these amounts no longer exist. And then, as I mentioned, on page 19, lines 17 through 12, there are substantial repealers that are contained in this bill, and I would encourage the committee to closely review those. And then if you'll turn to page 32, this is the enacting clause, and it also specifies which scholarships recipients will be subject to these. And so the effective date is July 1st of 2026, and any student that has received a scholarship prior to June 30th of 2026 would be subject to the laws in effect currently, and any recipient after that date would be subject to these new provisions. So subject to the committee's questions, that's the contents of this particular bill.
It's a lot of work. Thank you so much for all of that. Questions for Tanya? Yes. I'm not sure who's got their hand up. Is that Representative Kelly? Or are you just thinking? Oh, Senator Scott? Questions?
Madam Chairman, my question is in the fiscal area. Is this the appropriate time, or is Matt going to talk to us on that first?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Matt?
Senator Scott, good segue. Matt Wilmarth, LSO Senior School Finance Analyst. As part of this bill draft request, the committee also requested some fiscal analysis and some historical context related to the Hathaway Scholarship Program amounts and how those compare to tuition and fees at the University of Wyoming and Wyoming Community Colleges from the inception to current. And then also wanted to understand the fiscal impacts of such amendments as contained in this bill draft, as well as historical revenues and expenditures to the Hathaway Scholarship account. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll go through the fact sheet. This should be your second meeting material within your notebook. This fact sheet, as I indicated, provides some information as requested by the committee from its May 28th and 29th meeting. And I won't belabor the first two pages because that's really what Tanya's went through. But if you go to table 1 on page 2, this just summarizes the current and the original and the proposed Hathaway Scholarship Program amounts. The first column on the original award amount identifies the award amounts in an annualized amount on the inception of the program in academic years 2006, 2007. The honor scholarship was $3,200, the performance scholarship $2,400, and opportunity and provisional opportunity scholarships at $1,600. There's only been one increase since the program. That was in 2014, and that's in that current year or current award amount annualized column. So the current award amounts, I believe they were increased 5% in 2014. And so currently it's $3,360 for honors, $2,520 for the performance, and $1,680 for the opportunity and provisional opportunity scholarships. The needs-based scholarship is a little bit unique for the honors scholarship. The students that receive an honor scholarship have their cost of attendance paid for that exceed the first $2,000 of the financial aid threshold. The needs-based provides the opportunity and provisional opportunity and performance scholarships up to 25%, but not to exceed $1,575 annually, exceeding the $2,000 of unmet financial need. That is not changed under this proposed legislation, but importantly, as Tanya indicated, we did draw in those annualized or semester-based amounts that are currently in statute because the intent is not to exhaust the full lump sum amount in the first year and not utilize the need-based. So that's the purpose of that complicated amendment that you see in the bill draft. In terms of the financial impact or trying to estimate the fiscal impact related to the lump sum, it's not possible. And we've analyzed this in two ways. First, we went back to the fiscal note that was associated with this bill when the Joint Education sponsored this, I believe in 2021 or 22 interim. And the response from the Department of Education is it's indeterminable. The reason for that is twofold. One, the increase in the eligibility after your high school graduation date increases from 4 years to 20 years. Trying to predict what student behavior is or the initiation of the Hathaway exceeding another 16 years is almost impossible to predict. The second is we don't know who will utilize the full amount, and you'll get into this in the next set of tables, is in the lower tiered scholarships, a student may expend more money up front than they currently receive. And with the repeal of the student academic or satisfactory academic progress requirements, students that may be ineligible currently under that provision now may be eligible and they'll expend more dollars. So it's impossible or indeterminable at this point to predict what the fiscal impact on the Hathaway scholarship expenditure count is. Tuition and fees, I'll draw your attention to tables 2, 3, and 4 on pages 3 and 4 of this fact sheet. The first table on page 3, which is table 2, is the honors scholarship. This illustrates the tuition and fees, and you'll see this tuition and fees portion repeated in each of the next 3 tables. The difference in here is the corresponding columns on the right. So you can see what the tuition fees were in 2006-07, which is the first academic year at the University of Wyoming and colleges that the Hathaway Scholarship could be utilized, and then the tuition fees for academic year 2025-26. You can see where each of the increase or the percent increases from that time period have been. One note on this is in 2019-20 academic year, the commission increased the cap on the number of courses or credit hours from 12 to 15. So anything over 15, now you don't have to be charged for credit hours. That used to be at 12 credit hours. So 25% of this increase that you see in the percent increase column is attributable to that increase in the cap. So students are now paying for that additional 3 credit hours. So that's one distinction or one note I draw your attention to. So how to interpret this table on the honor scholarship and going down is in academic year 2006-07, the honor scholarship paid for 91% of the tuition fees at the University of Wyoming and paid for in excess of the tuition fees at the colleges in the state. Currently, the honors scholarship pays for an academic year 2025-26 approximately 40.75% of the university's tuition fees, and it varies by community college, somewhere around 70 to 75% of the tuition fees. Importantly, though, is recall the need-based scholarship pays for cost of attendance in excess of the first $2,000. So I just wanted to point that out. Another important point is the Wyoming Community College Commission is the entity that establishes tuition amounts for the colleges. The colleges independently set their own fee schedules. So you'll note that the tuition fees do vary across the colleges, but the tuition amount is set by the commission. Going down to the performance scholarship, and I won't belabor my comments, you can see the differences between each of the colleges and the university for the performance in Table 3, and in Table 4 is for the opportunity and provisional opportunity. I'll pause there if there are any questions before I get into kind of the expenditures of the funds.
Questions? Senator Scott?
Chairman, several, and some of them will relate to the expenditure of the funds, so maybe I ought to hold them. But one general question, my instinct is that when you look at on say Table 2 on the increase in the tuition and fees, that increase in these academic institutions has been significantly higher than the general rate of inflation. Do you have any ballpark estimate of how that comparison works?
Matt?
Madam Chair, Senator Scott, I did not look at any inflation factors from academic year 2006-07 forward. I can certainly pull that up and identify what that 19 years worth of inflation. I don't know what that is, either from the WCLI or the CPI. Off the top of my head, but I can certainly see, go back to my computer and pull that. In terms of the increase in how that compares to other colleges or university, I don't know either. That would be something I would also recommend looking at rather than just inflation.
And Madam Chairman.
Follow up? Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, I think both of those things are something that, as a committee, we do need to have a little basic understanding. I think in general, there's been quite a bit of inflation in the academic costs, and I don't know how Wyoming compares to other states, but I think in general, everybody's has been higher than the general inflation rate, and that does make a difference. We are going to have to think about being able to fund the Hathaway going forward, because we're clearly in some trouble on that, and we need to look into what's going on. I think we're performing better than we've been able to increase the tuition fees, and I think we need to have a better understanding of the mechanisms there. My question, and it may be premature still, on page 1, you speak of the effects being interminable and determinable. And my general question is, given that, how the heck are we ever going to manage the thing if we pass this? And that really is a question more directed at the committee than the staff. And it does seem to me, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, it does seem to me we have a risk of tying up a bunch of the funds in these lump sums and then finding we can't fund the demand from actual students in the future. And am I missing something? This is complicated, and as you said, there was a complicated amendment in there that I don't pretend to fully understand. But are we running a significant risk of getting into that kind of trouble if we should pass this thing?
Matt?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Scott, yes, I mean, that is one of the complicating factors with that, because the predictability of the current scheme in requiring students to initiate within 4 years, you can take off a lot of students that don't initiate after 4 years. Complicating that with the 20-year window makes it unpredictable. I believe there is a mechanism in statute that says if the funds within the expenditure account and the reserve account are insufficient, then awards are made on a first come, first served basis. That may be a policy consideration with the committee if you want to prioritize those on when they were originally initiated, or I don't have any answers off the top of my head besides that. And then secondly, I think it is complicated in terms of administration. Right now, the Department of Education knows who qualifies and what that amount is. There is a complicating factor in that now you have to track the student and how much they have left after they've expended a portion of their lump sum. You have a total award, but then if they spend 80% in the first semester or the first year, it is a little bit more complicated in terms of certifying how much is remaining in that. They would have to change their systems in tracking how much each student has a remaining. I would leave other administrative questions to either the Department of Education or the commission or the university.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Matt. This was very helpful. These charts was very helpful. And my question really zeroes in on, looking at what was the intent when the statute was created for the Hathaway Scholarship. What were they thinking? What were they hoping to achieve? And we do see this significant erosion because of, again, changes in expenses for universities and charges and things. But, at some point, it seems like we go, for example, in the honors from 91.04% when the statute was created. This is what they were looking at, a substantial contribution to an honor student, for example, being able to have a significant amount of those fees and expenses covered by the scholarship. We're now at 40.75%, it looks like. And so I guess that's one of my concerns overall. Are we addressing that? How are we going to fix that? And then I do have some concerns on the longevity. I think it's absolutely impossible to predict in a 20-year period what people will do. I have a lot of questions for, Tanya might could address about what do we do with eligibility? So 10 years out, 20 years out, does performance in high school have any really relevance to whether or not they really qualify for the intent of the scholarship? I just see so many gaps in the process in that long of a period of time. So, I'm troubled by a lot of it. And are we trying to do too much? And are we doing the right thing? Are we messing with other types of scholarships that exist that maybe we should focus on better funding on there or getting those programs, operating better? So I know I just have a lot of concerns about the amendment, and not that LSO made these problems. We invited you into this and appreciate the work that's been done, but I have a lot of concerns across those issues. So any of those that you might want to address might be helpful to me.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Lawley, on the first, what it was the intent, was it intended to maintain that ratio of the honors scholarship or the performance scholarship or opportunity scholarship, to maintain those ratios of paying for the tuition and fees and keeping up with just the natural inflationary pressures related to costs of attending post-secondary institutions. I do think, yes, there is the intent built into the expenditure account and the reserve account and just the endowment itself to increase expenditures or inflation-proof the endowment and the expenditures. And I'll maybe, Madam Chair, if I can walk through the expenditures and then we'll come back to the policy piece on the 20 years. So,
Please go ahead.
thank you, Madam Chair. If you look at Table 5 on the bottom of page 4, you can see that the expenditures are, for fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2025, they're about the same. Part of the reason for that is the number of students participating has decreased somewhat since 2025, and that's just a natural erosion of the number of students. Graduating Wyoming high schools has decreased, but I also think, to your point, has the lack of increase in Hathaway scholarship awards made students look elsewhere? I don't know, but if it's not worth, the 91% that it used to be, if it's only going to pay for 41% of the tuition and fees at the University of Wyoming. Now, the honors is a little bit different because of the needs-based, but are students making different choices because the value of the Hathaway scholarship isn't as much as it was initially? I can't answer that. That's just a hypothetical question. But I do think students likely look at the value of the scholarship award compared to other scholarships that they can get elsewhere. So expenditures did peak in fiscal year 2020 and 2020 at 18.2 million. And it has decreased since then. And part of that is the increase in, the 4% from 2014 is when the 1 year increase occurred. Like I said, I do think part of the stagnant nature is because the scholarship has not been increased since that time, but also the utilization has stayed stagnant as well. To address a little bit about the inflation proofing, or what was the intent from the get-go, I'll take you to Table 6 on the last page, page 6. And I'll kind of explain the expenditure and the reserve accounts. So the Hathaway endowment account is set up a little bit differently than what we refer to as the spending policy accounts, the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School account within the Permanent Land Fund. All investment earnings from the Hathaway scholarship account are deposited within the expenditure account and can be utilized in each year to pay for the scholarship awards. There's no limit on the amount of investment earnings that can be utilized in a year to pay for the scholarship awards. Unlike your spending policy amounts, where you've limited yourself to 5% on the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, and then in excess of 5% on the Common School account, there's a swap of investment earnings to be transferred to the Common School reserve account. So the intention was always to utilize the investment earnings off the Hathaway's endowment account and to be deposited to pay for the scholarships each year. The reserve account, so after each year, after you expend all your funds, any excess investment earnings are then transferred to the reserve account. And then the reserve account acts as a buttress between years where investment earnings are not up to the amount of scholarships. That's only happened 3 times over the year of, or over the tenure of the program. The first year was in 2016, the second was in 2020, and then the third was in 2023. Every other year, the scholarships have been less than the investment earnings. This past fiscal year, if you read your July Craig update, you'll note that the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School Permanent Land Fund have had exceedingly large returns this year. The Hathaway is no different. The total investment earnings this year were approximately $54.7 million. the largest in its history by approximately $18.8 million. So, I leave it to you all to make a prediction on whether or not you believe the best policy is to increase the Hathaway Awards, to match or mirror what the intent was from the beginning. I don't know what the intent was of the Hathaway initially to, what was it to provide regularly inflated amounts to those awards? I don't know. But it was the intent to inflation-proof the endowment itself. And you can see in the second to last column on the right that there have been transfers to the endowment account. This year, approximately $24.6 million will be transferred from the reserve account to the corpus. So that'll be reinvested in the corpus and help inflation-proof the endowment going forward. The one unique thing on the reserve account is initially the reserve account was limited to 3.75% of the 5-year average, meaning anything over that would be transferred to the corpus. That was increased to 4.5%. And then 2 years ago, that was increased to 8%. You're retaining more money in your reserve account currently than was originally envisioned. So if, that's really within the scope and framework of the Select Committee on Capital Financing Investments. That was a policy choice on them to have all these reserve accounts be 5x or 5 times of the spending policy amount. But again, the Hathaway is a little bit different in terms of how it operates. Big picture, this year, or this past fiscal year, was the largest year for investment earnings. It exceeded fiscal year 15's by about $18.8 million. Your reserve account's going to end or ended fiscal year 2025 with a balance of almost $55 million. That will be utilized in years when investment earnings don't pay for the scholarship amounts. And again, that's only happened 3 times in the almost 20 years that this account's been in existence. So I hope that helps explain the expenditure account, the expenditures from the account, and the investment earnings and how that operates.
Just to dovetail on Matt's explanation, I have heard anecdotally that there were basically 2 driving forces for the Hathaway Scholarship, and there was a select committee created to study this. It was the higher education, I can't remember the entire title, but it wasn't necessarily the Hathaway Scholarship Committee. And anecdotally, I've heard 2 driving forces. One, to cover the bulk of the tuition at Wyoming colleges. And the second was to keep, in an effort to keep these students in Wyoming. And so I do think that was the intent of the original scholarship. There may be members that were on those select committees. And then in response to your second question, I think that's a valid policy consideration for you all. But as far as the bill draft goes, that is how it's operationalized. Eligibility is based on your performance on the success curriculum and the ACT, or perhaps the work keys test that may have been taken even 19 years prior to eligibility. That's certainly a policy consideration for you all.
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
Madam Chairman, as I'd like to address the question on the purposes of this, as the sponsor of the bill that created the Hathaway, and as I think the last member of the implementing committee that's still in the legislature, let me address some of those things. There were really 2 main motivations behind the bill and what passed. One of them was we were trying to give high school students an incentive to basically study harder, work harder, learn more, do better. And there was a lot of talk about, I believe it was called the Taylor Plan, where a wealthy individual had started it, took a disadvantaged high school down in Louisiana and challenged the students that if they would achieve a certain level of performance, he'd pay their college tuition. And that was very successful, and his family got to pushing this nationwide. And we had heard quite a bit about it because the Business Council was promoting it. So, and it had been very effective in terms of motivating the high school students to get more out of high school. And frankly, I think it has achieved that. But that was one of the main motivations. The second was, it wasn't expressed as paying the whole tuition, but the Constitution says that the University of Wyoming should be as nearly free as possible. And that explicit language was a major motivator. And we were looking for how did we go about doing this? And frankly, the bill as it went through the legislature was markedly improved. The House, it was a started Senate file naturally. The House committee knew there was a major surplus in the school foundation account, and they were afraid it was going to be raided for God knows what purpose that somebody might creatively thought. And they wanted to keep it within education. And so that the House had been debating on quite a scale, should you have a merit-based scholarship, which was what the Taylor Plan was advocating, or should you have a needs-based scholarship? And they figured out if you spent enough, the two approaches merged, because everybody who had the capability of going to college could earn a merit-based scholarship if the criteria were such that the pool was large enough. And that's what they did. And the concept in the initial bill had been that we'd fund it with an endowment, and they kept that. So that was, Madam Chairman, how it developed. And we were very gratified when we looked at the results, and I don't know whether it was ever done as a formal study, but it was done. And what we found was that for the students who were our best and our brightest, it really didn't make too much difference to them. They had, the colleges and universities across the country, including UW, competed for those students, and those students had plenty of scholarship opportunities. But for the average student who had the ability to go to college, but didn't necessarily, the means was going to be a problem, this was suddenly a benefit they could earn, and it did in fact motivate them to study harder in high school and improve. And what we were seeing was a number of students who had been unable to go beyond the community college for financial reasons in part, were able then to go to the university and did. And the university enrollment of those students increased. And a number of other students who had been unable to afford any higher education were then going to community college. And the increases were significant. And we looked at that as really a reward from this. So in terms of meeting the original intent, the fact that the award is slipping as a percentage and has slipped in a major fact for tuition and fees is we're getting away from the original intent and not achieving it as well. And we have not tried to say, okay, we'll be more selective. We've tried to make this, keep this as available to anybody who's capable of doing the academic work and motivated to do it. So that's why the award has been slipping, as it's been popular, more popular than I think even we envisioned in our wildest dreams when we passed it. And some of we got to improve what's going on in the high school. The success curriculum was aimed at that. Started out with 3 sentences, and it's what now, 3 pages in the statutes? We've played with it as a legislature quite a bit. But, Madam Chairman, that was a good part of the history behind it. And we were absolutely lucky in the timing on this. We had a mineral boom going on at that time, and that enabled the whole thing. And frankly, that was part of the reason I started the effort, was I thought we ought to save some of that mineral boom for the future, and wanted to do a bunch of things. As a higher education endowment was in the same bill. Had failed a year before it passed as a budget amendment, came back as a bill that we had worked out more carefully. But the House committee, it really is a classic case of legislation being improved by the legislative process. And one of the things they did was smart, was instead of trying to put all the details in the original bill, have a select committee on implementation, which was a legislative and private committee. And that filled in then a lot of these details. So, Madam Chairman, that's some history, and that's some of the intent. And frankly, my opinion is the original intent continues to be valid. And I have major reservations about this bill because I think it is getting away from, I don't know what extending the time to 20 years does in terms of motivating a high school student. I think having the original award available, to start college does, but 20 years out, that's a little far.
Senator Rothfuss, and then I'll come to you.
So, Madam Chairman, and I wanted to provide a little background then on the discussion around this bill, and you were on that committee as well, Madam Chairman, the Wyoming Tomorrow Task Force. The discussion, and this was back in 2020, I think, was how do we actually make use of it and accomplish those objectives a little bit better, and what was holding the Hathaway back from how it was being utilized relative to the original vision. And this bill ends up doing 2 things, and they are separate things, right? They don't depend on each other. One of them is the lump sum concept, and the other is extending the timeline. On the extending the timeline, where it's at 20 years at this point in this bill, the discussion was, why do we need a timeline? That was the original discussion. Why do you have to go immediately to college? We know that that's a common path, but we also discussed a lot that sometimes people's lives interfere with their desire to go to the university or our colleges. Something gets in the way. What gets in the way might be a great job in the oil field for 6 years or 8 years or 10 years. And then they still want to go back and do something, achieve more of a degree. It might be, hey, I had a couple of kids and that was not a good time for me to be going to the university or the college. At the same time, maybe it is a good time, but maybe you don't want to go full-time. That was another problem that was identified. The Hathaway is very much structured around full-time enrollment continuously for 8 semesters. That was how it was built. We've softened that a little bit over the years and a number of tweaks. So it's not quite as onerous as it was when it was first drafted, where you pretty much had to go 8 consecutive semesters. You don't get money for summer school. You didn't get money for J-term. You just do your 8 semesters regardless of what life throws you. So we've tweaked that over the years, but this tries to relax that. And so the conversation began, why is it that we want someone who worked hard in high school and did all the right things? Why do we want to reward that person if they choose higher education immediately? All right, you've succeeded, we like you. We're gonna give you your money that you earned. But if life changes and you don't have that as your best pathway right then, I'm sorry, we're taking your money away. You earned it, but we're going to revoke it because we no longer think you're worthy of a higher education. That was the discussion we had. And what we came up with is there's no reason for a limit at all. You earned your Hathaway. You did the work. Here's your Hathaway dollars. Now, regrettably, accountants and folks that unfortunately have to work with the dollars and the reality of how it creates a liability and unpredictability in our revenue streams, that sort of poured a bucket of water on our discussion about what if we just left it wide open. And so we ended up with 20 years. And there's nothing magical about 20 years. It could be 10 years. That's better than it is now. Our preference, I think, as a committee was let's open it right up, except for the fact that it creates that uncertainty from an accounting standpoint. So that is a real consideration. The unpredictability of the expenditures was probably the thing we talked about more than anything else on that little working group. And so the 20-year aspect is the challenge there. Looking at the lump sum side, the discussion was around the fact that the Hathaway did work very well for the honors level. Honors level students that are doing 4 years of school, honors has worked well for our students, even at the lower rates, even at these rather paltry, 40% of paying tuition and fees. It's working. Those students complete at a very high rate. They complete their undergraduate degree, whether they start at the colleges and go to the university, whether they start at the university, that honors tier works, and they get their value out of it. The other tiers, when you look at the data, they don't complete. They don't end up getting a final degree. A lot of times it's because they end up having to do some of the makeup remedial courses, and that gets them set aside. Other times what they want is a 2-year degree, which is a great thing. It might be a technical degree, it might be CTE, it might be nursing, welding. There's a lot of opportunity that our colleges offer around the state that are exceptional career opportunities that don't require a 4-year degree. Hathaway's structured for 4 years. If you want your money, you need to go for 4 years to get your money. And as we were talking about that, particularly the provisional opportunity and the opportunity levels, if you just took those funds, put them together and gave them over 2 years for those individuals, they can get a lot closer to funding their undergraduate tuition. It should be the same cost to the state, but we actually count a little bit on the fact that those people are going to fail out, right? They don't use all their money. And so we reap that as revenue. And we can look at that as we do, as legislators. Well, heck, that's more money for the bottom line. But the bottom line in this instance is not how much money do we keep because we've withheld it from folks that didn't properly use their Hathaway. The bottom line is supposed to be how many people do we get degrees to that then have better career opportunities in the state of Wyoming, can stay here and can get things done. And the lump sum approach where we give true flexibility, we let them spend their Hathaway funds when they can. I might be able to take 2 classes this semester and 0 next semester. That's okay. We shouldn't count it as an entire semester burned, which is how it works right now, right? I take 2 classes, I've burned my Hathaway eligibility for an entire semester. At the honors level, that's a bad choice, particularly at the colleges, right? You've wasted money, we don't give it back to you. This is just a debit card that says, look, for a lot of you, life is going to be, you're going to go to college for 4 years, and the honors level works. But for an awful lot of folks in Wyoming, particularly those at the provisional and opportunity level, we found that life is not that predictable, and that rather than us telling you how to live your life and when you can spend your Hathaway that you earned, we're going to give you a debit card that says, all right, do your best with this. We're hopeful for you, and we want to give you every opportunity possible to achieve your objectives in higher education. So yes, less certainty. It's a lot easier to predict a nice dropout rate, where we know if we give someone a provisional scholarship, we can almost count on them to drop out within 2 years. And therefore, we can have our perfect little trend line of 50% of these people will be gone and we'll save that money. But that's not the objective in my mind of what we're supposed to be doing with Hathaway. We want to meet people where they're at and give them higher educational opportunities that they want within our public education system in the state. So that's where this bill came from. It is to help, to provide maximum flexibility. And if there are things we can do to make it more predictable, I think we should. But at the same time, the idea that we need to define the system based on what works for us as legislators to make it easy and predictable, as opposed to making it optimal for the people of the state of Wyoming, I just don't think that's our true motivation, right? This is for the people that earned it by working hard. And remember, the success curriculum's still there. You have to work hard to earn this scholarship. And providing more flexibility so that they can use it, not just earn it, but use it, is of great value. So I just wanted to weigh in and provide that little bit of background.
Thank you. Representative Lawley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and again, appreciate all the background, but I still have the same questions, and I want to come back to one of them. First, about what you mentioned about the declining requests for applications for these some of these scholarships that we see, and you listed several possibilities. Has anyone looked at the fact that this may be actually taking students out of state? Because I believe some of the decline is where they're getting better scholarship opportunities out of state. I don't, I have only anecdotal evidence of that, but, and I do believe one of the goals of this scholarship certainly was and continues to be in my mind, keeping our kids at Wyoming schools. And so that's one of the reasons I focused on what I just would call a erosion of the value of the Hathaway scholarship. Secondly, I'd like to address, and this may go more to Tanya in terms of policy, but are we trying to sort of create a quasi process within the Hathaway and sort of thinking and adding some things that really are something that would be better to look at Wyoming's Tomorrow scholarship and say, this is the place to talk about the non-traditional student? Because I believe that's really what that vehicle was partly about. And so I'm wondering if we're fixing the wrong thing, if we're meddling with the wrong thing. Would it be better for us to go back and look at Wyoming's Tomorrow and see if there aren't ways to improve that to address the issues that Senator Rothfuss raised, which I think are very real, and we want to give all kinds of opportunities. For me, the question is the Hathaway vehicle the best place, or will it create a little bit more difficulty, confusion, and be more difficult to administer? And so that's really my issue, is I was part of when we passed Wyoming's Tomorrow, and I think we talked a lot about non-traditional students and how important it is we understand that in our current society that that's really a very common thing, and we had a gap there. But that's what I'm struggling with, is Hathaway the place to do that? Maybe, maybe not. I see it creates, and we can see from some of the comments, it creates some issues to put it into here. But again, then I have overall this concern about the erosion of the scholarship from its original purpose, and specifically about, is it possible that the goal of keeping the Wyoming kids here, which is really an important goal to me personally, that we're ignoring that reality. And so we're not even talking about that. And so those are my concerns and some questions for you guys and there's others coming after you perhaps that can zero in on some of these things as well.
Yeah, Madam
Tanya, go
Chair.
ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Lawley, we don't have the information on data for the reasons of decline. I think those are probably vast, but perhaps the Department of Education could assist you in getting that information. As far as, is this the right vehicle? I think that's a policy choice for the legislature, which vehicle you'd like to utilize to address this issue.
Yes, go ahead.
And I do appreciate that, Tanya. Maybe it would help, particularly if we have a lot of new people on our committee. Could you outline some of the differences, or just talk about Wyoming's Tomorrow, or maybe you can do it in a memo later, but I think it would be really important for them, to see that, what's the intent of that scholarship and how it's different.
Certainly,
Tanya.
Madam Chair and Representative Lawley, we did present a memo on the differences between the Wyoming Tomorrow and the Wyoming Works Scholarship. I'm happy to send that to the committee members. I don't have it memorized.
Other questions from the committee? Just one for me. Do you have any data on, I know, we all know that this is happening. We're seeing a decline in Wyoming students graduating. Do you have any data on that, what that is? Have you looked out 5, 10 years just to kind of see, taking a look at our kindergartners and where we are with that?
Madam Chair, the LSO doesn't have that data, but I know someone who does is the Department of Ed.
We'll be sure to ask them. Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, would like to add one thing to the discussion. One of the things we talked about in the implementing committee was the requirements coming out of high school, what they had to be. And I thought, well, gee, maybe we could back off on some of the math and science requirements for the non-honors scholarships. And the oil and gas industry came and testified and was vigorously opposed to that. And this was 20 years ago, but they were saying that what we're doing out in the field with the drilling rigs and with the production work, we need to have that science technical background for all our employees. And that's something that I'm sure has not gone away and has become a stronger push as the society has gotten more and more tech heavy. And I think that that's relevant here to get the push for people to get as much of the education under their belts before they fully hit the world of work, because they need for a lot of the basic jobs and careers that they're getting into. They need that training up front. So I think even those that take a provisional scholarship, do a semester, and then have to drop out, they're probably still getting significant benefit that will help them in the workplace. And you'll have a full lifetime for society to recover the benefits of paying for that extra education, as opposed to you wait until you're 40 to go back and get it. You just aren't going to be in the workforce that much longer. You've used up half your time, say, in the workforce. So I do think the Wyoming Tomorrow is a much better way to address the continuing education needs, and we ought to stick with a more traditional, maybe more flexible, but a more traditional approach with the Hathaway, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to concur with Senator Scott and Representative Lawley and say that the May 13th memorandum on page 2 and 3 points out that we received before the last meeting. That's the memo that talks about the differences between the Hathaway and the Tomorrow Scholarship.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Yes, go ahead, Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a question about how the people that administrate the Hathaway Scholarship and the Tomorrow Scholarship, is there information sharing between the two, and are there circumstances that are factored in when someone was previously eligible for the Hathaway in the Tomorrow Scholarship?
Yes,
Go ahead, Tanya.
Madam Chair and Representative Singh, if you take advantage of one of those scholarships, the Tomorrow or the Works, you're ineligible for the Hathaway, and likewise. So if you take advantage of one of the other scholarships, you're prohibited from accepting another scholarship that's provided by the state that may be addressing a somewhat similar but different need. That was expressed on the creation of both the Works and the Tomorrow.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So just to be clear, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding. So if someone were to apply for the Tomorrow Scholarship, would the people that administer that scholarship know whether or not that student had qualified for the Hathaway?
Tanya, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Representative Singh, yes, it's the same groups, the Wyoming Community College Commission. And so, yes, they would, there's the certification process under all of these scholarships. It's the same entities involved. You would have to cross-check those students to ensure they're not receiving the scholarships. And, I mean, that's a commandment of the law, so.
Other questions? Yes, go
Madam
ahead,
Chair, just
Representative
to
Lawley.
follow up
Oh,
on
go ahead.
Representative Lawley's question on the Wyoming's
Go ahead.
Tomorrow value. So per academic term, if you're enrolled up to 12 semesters, per academic term, which is a semester, it's $1,800. If you look at that on an academic year, that's $3,600 per year, which is less than the honors scholarship at $3,360 per year. So the value of the Wyoming Tomorrow in terms of the scholarship award is more under the Wyoming's Tomorrow. I will caveat that with, under the honors scholarship, again, the needs-based scholarship comes into play. So students who qualify on the financial need basis side receive their cost of attendance, which is much greater than tuition and fees. It includes room and board and meals and so forth. That needs-based pays for all of that in excess of the first $2,000. So there is more value than just the scholarship award, but I just wanted to provide the numbers on that.
Representative Lawley?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to put another issue on the table as we look at this bill, and that is the requirement for the ACT. Again, was that, I'm sure that was in probably the original bill, the requirement of the testing on the ACT, but is that something we should consider, whether or not as a requirement? Is that, do other states, because a lot of other states now have something similar to Hathaway. Is that a common, and again, I know you might not be able to answer these questions right off your head, but I just want to put that issue on the table of the ACT requirement and how that might affect certain kids' decision about the Hathaway scholarship and where that puts them, and whether or not, again, they're getting better offers from other states that don't require an ACT for their scholarships, certain scholarships.
Tanya, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, Representative Lawley, the department will correct me if I'm wrong on this, as they administer this program largely, but I believe that the score is tied to the sort of cut scores from the 2015-2016 test, and it's the national percentile rank of 56% or greater. That's for the Opportunity Scholarship, or the Performance Scholarship, and each one of the scholarships has a different percentile rank. It did used to say the ACT and the work keys, but as a proprietary product, it made competitive negotiation very difficult, so.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Senator Scott, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Scott, go ahead, then we'll come back.
On that particular issue, the original intent was that the ACT would be the primary discriminator as to what level of scholarship the student would be eligible for. We did have some requirements on a high school grade point in there, but it was not expected that they would be the primary discriminator. The reason for that was that we anticipated if we used just the high school grades, we would simply induce impossible grade inflation, and the high school grades wouldn't mean anything. we've seen quite a bit of that anyhow. But we were afraid that we would make a whole bunch of people who were not capable of doing the college work eligible on a merit basis if we didn't use some outside test that we could not be influenced in terms of essentially dumbing the test down to where everybody would qualify. And we had seen some other states, and I think Georgia was one of them, that got in major trouble by trying to use high school grades in a similar program. And you just induce grade inflation, and it doesn't, you make a bunch of people eligible for whom this is not a wise choice because they're not capable of doing it. You're just setting kids up for failure. So that was why that ACT test was used, and I think we continue to use, I believe that's still basically that test, but you need to have an independent test that can't be influenced locally.
Thank you. Representative Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We seem to have gone off from the bill here to speaking more about implementation of the policy, so might it not be a good idea to let LSO leave the hot seat and maybe have the Department of Education come on?
Madam Chair, I just have 2 points to follow up and sort of to dovetail on Senator Scott's point. The law does require and, so it's your GPA and your performance on the ACT, and it is the ACT. It's the test that we pay for all students to take, and it's in the accountability statutes as well. And I was actually wrong about that Hathaway scholarship and the Wyoming Works and Tomorrow. It is if you are currently receiving those scholarships. So just wanted to clarify that for Representative Singh. I found those statutory sites. I'm happy to send those out.
Senator Rothfuss, you still
I'm good.
wanting to chat? Okay. Anyone else on the committee? Okay. Basically, I think we have public comment after all 3 scholarships, but I think we'll open up public comment on each one just to make sure we have, because these are big deals. So with that, let's just go ahead and Department of Education, do you have anything you'd like to say before we open it up for the public? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. Dickey Shaner with the Department of Ed, and I'm joined by our Chief Policy Officer, Nish Goikalea. We've been having very similar discussions to all of you about Hathaway. It comes up every session, and trying to understand the history and also, what we can do to keep it relevant is a really important thing. We thought it would be helpful to just share with you some of the feedback that Nish and the Hathaway team have collected from the Hathaway coordinators at the community colleges and the university, if that's okay.
Thank you, Dickey. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Again, Nish Goikalea, Chief Policy Officer for the Department of Ed. Some of the feedback from the coordinators is very much in line with your discussion today. Considerations and questions related to the lump sum use and the recourse for withdrawal, or if there is still going to be a need-based after that with the 20 years if all the lump sum is used. Timeline clarification, some disbursement concerns and questions, especially in regards to promoting persistence and academic success, administration complexity, and the potential for a record-keeping burden for both the Department of Education and for the institutions of higher ed, trying to keep track of 20 years of Hathaway use and the student in that timeline when there's constantly more and more students and more 20 years in there. There's also the potential for federal aid conflicts. The lump sum disbursement could disrupt the cost of attendance calculation and affect eligibility for other aid. And so that's a consideration we wanted to bring forward for you all as well.
Questions for Department of Ed? Yes, go ahead, Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Okay, there's a question at the end of this. I've had an issue here the entire time with money for grades, ACT scores. We're looking at rewarding success, but we're not necessarily rewarding hard work. Socioeconomic status, highly correlated with success in school. So we give bigger awards often to families that need it the least, because the kids are doing well because their family's well off. The grade inflation pressures are real. We see it in school districts with the idea of giving partial credit for no work being turned in, extending deadlines, allowing students to turn in work late to do it again if they fail the first time. The perverse incentive of bad habits that are not conducive to success in college. The ACT score also correlated with socioeconomic status. So obviously, if Tom was to wave a magic wand, that'd be a very different looking program, but that's not going to happen. But the question is, for the Department of Education, do we have data that correlates socioeconomic status with the rates of honor and performance awards?
Department of Ed, any ideas on that?
Madam Chair, Representative Kelly, I'm not so sure on that right now. I can't answer that right now, but we can definitely look into that and come back to you on that.
Yeah, interesting. Any other comments on the Department of Ed? You bring up a lot of questions. Yeah. Do you have a preference on, I know some of the things that you mentioned there, just with disbursement and record keeping and all of that. Would a 10-year window be a better fit for the committee that decides on this? I mean, we're still talking, you know, not 38-year-olds, but 28-year-olds that might be wanting to go back. I mean, is that too far out of the realm, or is 20 just way more than you can think about?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, that was something that we did discuss and that has been brought up, but there's a lot of differing opinions on that. And so I think it would just depend on the parameters and some of these other questions and considerations, whether they'd still be eligible for some of these other scholarships like you've all discussed with Wyoming's Tomorrow, and the recourse piece in there and some other things. So I think, you know, it's an opportunity, but it would need clarification.
Obviously, yeah. Other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, thank you so much. I think we'll go ahead and open it up then to the public and anyone that would like to come up. I think we have somebody from the, maybe a couple somebodies from the higher ed group. Please come forward and introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Erin Taylor. I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. And with me today is Dr. Laurel Ballard with the Wyoming Community College Commission. I think she might be able to answer some of the questions in terms of administration and correlation with Wyoming's Tomorrow and all of those great questions that came up today. So with that, Madam Chairman, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Ballard. And then if I might have the opportunity as a parent to take my name tag off after maybe she's done, I'd love that opportunity as well.
Sure thing. Go ahead, Dr. Ballard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this was an interesting discussion today, and kind of as you were talking, Representative Lawley, that is where you went with Wyoming's Tomorrow, kind of made me wonder if there's like a point, like you give them access to the Hathaway until they're eligible, until they become eligible for Wyoming's Tomorrow, and it might make more sense than to cut off access to help you with some of those other pieces that Mr. Wilmarth was talking about, and then, you know, push them into the Wyoming's Tomorrow. And then for those that, you know, can access their Hathaway, and then when they're finished using it, then they can also, if they need to use the Wyoming's Tomorrow, and they have that option as well, right? They just can't use both of them at the same time. So we were also thinking that that might be a compromise to kind of the problems that you're trying to solve for. And then I'm happy to just answer whatever questions that you may have on that. And you also have the Wyoming's Works, depending on what they're looking for and what they're looking to go to school for, that could also support students as well.
Dr. Ballard, just since we do have a few new folks, would you just give a little high update, I guess, or high-level update on the Wyoming Works for those folks that are new?
Yeah, so happy to do that. Wyoming Works is a scholarship program that you put in place for the community colleges. It is very much focused on skill orientation. There's two pieces that were part of Wyoming Works. We talked about this, I think, at the last meeting, where there's the programmatic piece that you had funded. So there's funding that was provided to the commission to give out to the colleges for the development of some of those CTE programs and things like that. Because the startup costs for a lot of those programs are so high that it kind of helps shave some of that off and support the colleges in getting some of those programs up and off the ground so that in the long term, they can be something closer to self-sustaining. And then there's also the student component, so there's scholarships that are given to students to be able to access those programs. There's the two different types of programs, right? There's like the standard program, and then there's the critical programs and so then students access and the amount of scholarships and all of those kinds of things connect to that.
Thank you. Questions for either Dr. Ballard or Ms. Taylor? Yes, go ahead, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Laura, for bringing up Wyoming Works. I almost did, and I thought I was already complicating things enough, but I do think we have pieces in place to try to address a broad situations that students can find themselves in and seek to address certain things that are really important for our Wyoming right now in terms of the skills we need and the things kids want to go into that's not a traditional Hathaway pathway necessarily. So we do have these things that we created because I was involved a little bit with both Wyoming Works and Wyoming Tomorrow scholarships and have always been in support of them, but where are we on the funding on Wyoming Works and maybe even Wyoming's Tomorrow, that people can understand what, as we sit here today, what's set aside for Wyoming's Tomorrow and then Wyoming Works, so that we can see that too, as we might be looking at policy changes to understand that attached to them might be some dollars. So do you have any, someone's coming. You didn't
Dr.
have
Ballard or anyone else?
I'm impressed that you did not even have to phone a friend.
I know, that was really nice. Okay, all right, so I wish I had my pen to write down all your questions. It's okay. So Representative Lawley, can you just kind of recap your questions for me?
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Oh, look at that, thank you.
There you go. Well, it was really just to kind of give us a little overview of the money side on what particularly, but it'd also be for Wyoming's Tomorrow if you have how it's been currently funded and where we are with Wyoming Works on that, because I think that would be important for people to know.
Dr. Ballard?
Madam Chair, I think I'm going to turn this over to our interim director, Dr. Fenton Hughes. I think she's got all the actual numbers for you.
Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Madam Chair, Paige Fenton Hughes. I'm the interim executive director at the Wyoming Community College Commission, and I sent Laurel up here because Laurel knows a lot more than I do about most things, but she's been gone for a couple weeks, and I have been immersed in this budget. So I have these exact numbers in front, so I'll just share with you. So between 2019 and 2021, $4.6 million was appropriated, and right now I'm talking about the student grant portion of Wyoming Works, with just under 1.6 million remaining unspent. So what does that leave? 3 million were spent, I guess that means. However, I think Representative Lawley's question is, where are we and where are we going to be? So tomorrow, we will be asking the commission to move forward a budget request for $584,000. So combined with the 1.6 plus the 584, we believe that will cover the student grants for the upcoming biennium. So that's where we are on the student grant side. All right, on the program side, there's not much money in there. $3 million between 2019 and 2021, $3 million was appropriated for Wyoming Works. Remaining in there is $54,509. So what we asked the colleges to do was to go through the programs they originally funded with Wyoming Works, look at what they've absorbed into their budgets or what they've had to curtail because they didn't have a budget for it, and bring that forward. And then we've had multiple discussions on that. So we will be bringing forward either, I shouldn't say this publicly, either $7 or $9 million tomorrow, Madam Chair, depending on what our CFO gets exactly lined out today. And that will allow the colleges to sustain the programs, as Laurel said, that they stood up under that, and to continue those. And I believe, and I think maybe Senator Rothfuss or Senator Scott, people who were in those conversations back then, could speak to this, but was the intent that standing up the programs and starting things would be funded, but that it was hard to project what it would cost to sustain. So we'll be coming back with a request for those sustaining funds. And if that answers your question.
Senator Scott?
Quick question. When you're talking that 7 to 9 million, a year or biennium?
Madam Chair, Senator Scott, that'll be a biennial request.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Follow up. Appreciate that information. I think one of the things that that might be important for the committee to know is there's no, unlike the Hathaway, for example, there's no endowment attached to Wyoming Works, which again, it's just something we need to know and keep in mind. And as we look at this idea of the spectrum of students and their different needs and their different life circumstances, still continue to provide these different opportunities. We're kind of apples and oranges in terms of the way Hathaway has as an endowment. I think you can tell me Wyoming Tomorrow, I believe, has an endowment. So, but this one is different, but partly because we were kind of building it and looking at, but ultimately that I think was something the legislature may want to talk about, whether it's now or later, but is that if we're going to look at these across the spectrum, which I actually think is a good policy position, and let these things stand for what they do, and they do, each of them do it well, and have ability, if people can go from one to the other, all of it, if we look at it as sort of a system, that's something I think they're going to have to look at, is they have to be on some kind of parity in a way about funding, and we don't have for Wyoming Works that yet in place. So is that correct? Am I correct on that?
Madam Chair and Representative Lawley, that is correct. And thank you for bringing that up, because I want to share just a little bit of the story that I told Senator Rothfuss today. My learning curve's been straight up for 2 months. I've learned a lot from the presidents, but they're reluctant to start things without the sustainable funding. And so they realized the intent was to continue to fund what they've started up, but they have some trepidation because there's only so much space in their general fund. They can't absorb all of it in there. So that's a very good question, I think, to talk about and kind of mull around, because I think they'll continue to have that trepidation. And I remember in my district having the conversation about our COVID funds, right? So we were like, well, gosh, we got to be careful what we spend these on, because we're going to have to either suck this up or some person is going to not have a job. And so they kind of have those same kind of feelings about this, just because of the kind of one-time nature of those funds. So it's a very good conversation, I think.
Ms. Taylor, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, thank you for that. And WACD also has a one-pager that compares Wyoming's Tomorrow with Wyoming Works. I didn't come prepared for that today, but I can make sure the committee gets that. It's just kind of a nice visual all on one page. And just to just speak in English and, not that you aren't, but sometimes we academic it a little bit. Wyoming works, high demand, high need jobs. People can come straight from high school into these jobs, get them into the workforce. I just want to be clear on that, no age limits, et cetera. Wyoming's Tomorrow is aimed at adults. And so there's age requirements on that. And obviously Hathaway, you have all of that. So I just wanted to make that clear. We'll try and do what we can to provide more information. LSO has given you lots of great resources, but if you want a quick one-pager, we can do that too.
Any other questions? Okay, any other comments from the folks? Okay. Oh, that's right, you've got to speak as a parent now.
I am going to speak as a
Okay, you look
parent,
like the
Madam
same person
Chairman.
for some reason, you look the same.
No, that's okay. Erin Taylor, just representing myself and my family. I just want to encourage you, not specific to this bill, but to encourage you to have the conversations about the Hathaway, what the requirements are and whatnot. We've had experience in our family, 2 kids going to the University of Wyoming, both achieved, nice levels of the Hathaway. But my daughter is a situation where she had a 4-point plus GPA coming out of high school, had severe test anxiety, didn't test well on the ACT. And so the way it's set up right now with the it does penalize people like her. Achieved a 4.0 in her freshman year of college. She's a workhorse. She's going to get the work done with robust classes. So I just encourage you, it's set up to reward those who do well on both, but maybe not with the ACT. I also have another friend whose son is graduating this year, same situation, didn't test well. And I think her son is probably going out of state because he can get better scholarships because of that ACT. And this does also include, and my good friends at the university, with what they can get with some of those scholarships there. So it's just something for the universe to think about. COVID kind of changed some of that when students weren't taking the ACT, and understanding the impacts of, is this something that we really, really need? And is it a good measure for future performance? So that's just my own Erin Taylor mom comments. So I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you all for being here, and thanks for your testimony. Anyone else would like to testify? I think University of Wyoming's in the house. I see somebody with the brown and gold tie, so welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Smith with the University of Wyoming. I just wanted to provide a couple of what I see as positive statistics about the Hathaway, and I'm going to do my best, Madam Chair, to check internally with questions that Representative Kelly raised about socioeconomic status and Hathaway level. We may have some statistics, at least on financial need analysis, that gets done through the FAFSA process and be able to correlate that. I don't have a clear answer yet from my folks, but if we can collect that data, we'll be happy to provide it. I just wanted to note that last year we had, I think it was our second highest number of resident first-time students at the University of Wyoming, 907. And every indication, it's not an official number yet till we get a couple weeks into the semester, but every initial indication is we'll grow that number again a little bit this year. So I don't have the percentage of high school graduates that we're getting, what that 907 represents as a percentage of overall high school graduates from Wyoming. But we're seeing some positive movement on enrollment from our resident students. I just wanted to note that of those resident first-time, full-time students, 86% of our students receive the Hathaway. And when they do, the impact of that is pretty impressive. 67% of students that get the Hathaway graduate or leave the University of Wyoming with zero debt. So despite the erosion of that, and certainly I, as a parent and as representing the university, we would support kind of looking at restoring some of that buying power of the Hathaway. But it does have a great impact. It had a great impact on my family in planning what classes to take, to Senator Scott's earlier comments in high school. We tracked that carefully, as you can imagine. And so I was pleased for that. And I'm pleased that our constitutional, our kind of joint constitutional requirement that that education at UWB is nearly free as possible, despite the national headlines about debt and those things, that isn't necessarily the case at the University of Wyoming. The vast majority that get the Hathaway leave UW with zero debt. The ones that do have debt, the average is a total of $16,624 for that entire education. And that's less than what I paid for my daughter's vehicle. So I think there's some good things happening, and I appreciate the discussion and happy to contribute any data that we can collect in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? No. Thanks so much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? Ashley, do we have anyone online that's going to testify on this bill, or do you know yet?
Madam Chairman, yes, you do have one online.
Okay. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chase Christensen. Just going to speak to Representative Lawley's comment real quick with regard to costs around us and potential of our high school students leaving the state for education when they do have the Hathaway and the option to go to the University of Wyoming. Just a quick, I know since the introduction of the Hathaway Scholarship in the state, there have been multiple state institutions close by around Wyoming that have introduced programs of in-state tuition for Wyoming students that come to their institution. And looking at their cost of attendance online, the cost of attendance that's the sticker price, which we just heard is not necessarily what UW students end up paying, but it often is what parents and students are looking at when they think about what institution to attend. The sticker price is lower than what UW's price is, even after you subtract the Honors Hathaway Scholarship from that. So I would encourage you, to your point, I think there are some places where it may not even be such that we need to adjust prices or adjust the Hathaway Scholarship, but just the way that we even list things or advertise what we are charging or what the cost of attendance might look like for an in-state student. I think the conversation could be had a little bit differently with families so that the price of $26,000 or whatever that we see on the website may not be what we highlight for people. We may highlight the fact that 67% of our students leave with $16,000 of debt or less, regardless of what the Hathaway Scholarship is kicking out. So just to your point, I think there is some of that where sticker price is potentially causing families and students to choose other institutions than the university right now, and it may not need to be the case. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Christensen? Yes, Senator Scott, go ahead.
Sorry, Charlie.
Could you elaborate a little bit as to what's going wrong? Because Wyoming is one of the cheaper institutions to go to. Why is the sticker price in some of our competitive states coming out lower? What's gone wrong?
Mr. Christensen, go ahead.
Chairman Schuler, Senator Scott. The University of Wyoming is one of the cheaper flagship institutions across the country to go to. When we look at regional colleges and ones that our students, certainly in the northeast part of the state, some of the institutions that our students choose to attend, the price of attendance is lower than the University of Wyoming.
Other comments? Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the room before we go online? Okay. Go ahead and let whoever's out there come on in.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. I have invited Paula Medina to join the room now.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like us to know about the Hathaway.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paula Medina. I'm going into my last year of my undergrad in civil engineering and environment natural resources. I'm also the current president of the Associated Students at the University of Wyoming. Back in 2005, ASUW passed Senate Resolution 2129, a resolution encouraging the Wyoming State Legislature to implement the Hathaway Scholarship Program for the 2006-2007 academic year. We believed at the time that this program would create greater accessibility to higher education and saw it as an essential for the economic and social development of the state of Wyoming. We still believe that. ACW has been closely monitoring discussions from the legislature on this topic. We feel that there are opportunities for improvements of this opportunity for students. I cannot go into details yet as I'm awaiting approval from the ACW Senate, but I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that students care about the Hathaway and see its importance and value in accessing higher education. As a student and as a recipient of the Hathaway was one of the major reasons why I decided to study at the University of Wyoming. In high school, the Hathaway is positioned and promoted to students as one of the main reasons why students should stay in the state and study at our available institutions. I would see the value in an increase to this program, as I feel that at the moment we are doing a bit of false advertising since the Hathaway no longer covers a good portion of tuition and fees at our institutions. A lot of my peers chose to study out of state because of better scholarship opportunities elsewhere, despite for their love of state of Wyoming and their want to stay here. I'm not a legislator or a finance person, but I would love to see initiatives from this committee that trend towards meeting the original intent of this program, that is to make higher education as free as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. I am really excited to hear from someone who is recently in college and understanding what this has done for you, but questions for Ms. Medina? Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Medina, on the legislation, it sounds like ASUW hasn't made a decision on it, but speaking in your individual capacity, one of the things this legislation focuses on is providing more flexibility to you so that you can spend the funds as you need them. You could have a semester where you had 3 credits, another semester where you had a full course load, maybe taking a summer class. Whereas right now, the Hathaway is structured such that you have 8 semesters that you can utilize those funds. Do you favor the 8-semester model where you use the Hathaway on a semester basis, or would you think it would be better to switch to a lump sum structure where you can choose when to spend the funds that you've earned through the Hathaway?
Ms. Medina, go ahead.
You, Chairman. Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. What I would say is I think I'm a pretty traditional student, so I guess I would note that to the committee. I guess the eight semester has provided a lot of flexibility for me. It has allowed me to take J-term classes and summer classes, and especially as someone who has 2 majors, that has been especially beneficial in terms of flexibility because I can squeeze in different classes during the non-traditional semesters like the winter break and the summer semesters. So as myself, I would say that the flexibility is already exists. I would not see the lump sum, I guess, as a benefit to me. I think for students, their ability to manage money and understand how to appropriately use that and combine that with other scholarships, I think the lump sum may create certain complications on that turn.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Medina? Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. You bet. Anyone else? Is that the only one we have for the scholarship? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
All right. With that, we'll just go ahead and close down public testimony on this bill. Committee, what are your thoughts on this?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I move the bill.
Okay. Bill's been moved. Is there a second? We don't necessarily have to have one on this committee. Yep, there is a second from the co-chair. Okay, discussion.
Madam Chairman? So I think there are 2 separate issues here. There's certainly been a lot of concern with the longer-term eligibility, and I think that could be easily removed, and I know it can be easily removed, to leave the opportunity for the lump sum payment and the flexibility that's there, which doesn't seem to have generated as much concern. So I'd just start with a motion that we remove the 20-year eligibility and reverse it to the existing eligibility requirements. I think that there's a lot of support for that. I still like, personally, the ongoing approach, but I can see the complexity that creates, and I can see the concerns with that, as well as, again, the Wyoming Tomorrow scholarship came out of the same group, right? That's where that came from also. It was from the same task force. So that is a piece of legislation that we did pass since then, and this is another piece that went hand in hand with it. But the Wyoming Tomorrow does attempt to address after 24, and this is more focused on the early students, even if it would potentially benefit later students to have the Hathaway. But with just looking at one policy at a time, I'd make a motion to reverse the 20-year provision and take it back to existing statute in terms of the timelines.
Okay, there's a second. Let's have some discussion on that. Discussion? Okay, no discussion. We'll just go ahead and vote on that. All those in favor of that motion by Senator Rothfuss, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same. Okay, that amendment has passed. Any other amendments or discussion? Yes, go ahead.
I will say that I'm just flatly opposed to this bill. We just removed one of the causes. I don't like the lump sum provision either. I think that the real need here is to focus on improving the size of the awards, and so that we get a higher percentage of the tuition. I think that with the finances as they are, there's some possibility for that. So I think that's perhaps where we need to go. I think the testimony we had that the current flexibility seems to be adequate for most purposes is correct. I'm not necessarily opposed to making a little more flexibility, but I think we're better off with the known program and simply improving the funding so it's a higher percentage of the actual costs. And I was very impressed, Madam Chairman, with the testimony from the university in terms of the percentage of the students that are coming out debt-free, because that is a major problem in our society. So I think we need to keep the funding up and improve it so that percentage is even a little higher. And I don't think this bill really gets to that. I'm afraid that this bill will make people dependent on the government for longer, and I think the lump sum is a complication that's going to tie up money and give us administrative difficulties. So on and against the bill.
Other comments on the bill or any potential amendments? Anyone? Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. To address a couple of those concerns, the first thing I would say is, with this bill, you could literally do everything you can do now. You could meet it out over 8 semesters. You could use it exactly as it's done now. So there's no restriction. If you like how it is now, the bill lets you do it how it is now. And I think what we heard from Ms. Medina is exactly right. This works great for our exceptional students that are going to the University of Wyoming for 4 years, because that's how the Hathaway was designed to work well. And when we looked at this on the Wyoming Tomorrow task force, that wasn't what we were worried about. What we were worried about were the folks that were going largely to the colleges, and they wanted a 2-year certificate, for example. They were in CTE realms. They were looking for that nursing program that's a 2-year nursing program. Hathaway doesn't work great for those individuals, and we certainly didn't hear anybody advocating that, hey, that really helped me. That $800 or $840 per semester for 8 semesters, where I wanted to utilize 2 of those semesters, that was great for me. That sure sure hit the nail on the head for all that work I did in school. Because it doesn't help those students much at all. They have to figure out how to foot the bill themselves, and they have to find the time, and they probably have to work another job. The structure of this and the intent of this is to help our folks that are going into technical careers, probably need a 2-year degree or a 1-year certificate from our colleges. This shifts it from that $840 a year to, you've got, in the case of a lot of them, $6,720 available. So you've got a full year and a half of tuition at one of our colleges, tuition and fees completely paid for. You can do this, you can make this work. It's addressing that need. So I agree, the University of Wyoming doesn't need this change. I mean, it might help a little bit of flexibility if someone wants to take a year off in between. Don't try to take a year off on Hathaway and go tour Europe. You want to talk about some challenges in life, and if you screw things up, you can get yourself all wrapped around the axle. Once you're on the Hathaway pathway right now, you better stay on it. But this provides flexibility. And I guess I'm really struggling to understand why we would refuse to provide additional flexibility when we're not taking anything away. Nothing is taken away through this bill, nothing at all. You can do things exactly as you do them now, without exception, if you really like the 8-semester pathway. This provides additional flexibility for those students that don't fit the traditional 4-year college pathway. That was our intent, was to ensure that additional flexibility. So I guess I just don't see why there's resistance, and we heard resistance, to providing additional flexibility. It doesn't make sense to me. This is for the students. It's not for our ease of administration. It's for the students, and this helps the students.
Comments? Excuse me. Other comments? Yes, go ahead, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to propose a motion to table this bill until the November meeting and maybe have a group to discuss the flexibility aspect of this. I mean, I think there is some that could be had that we could maybe agree on, but I think that I get the sense that this bill is probably going down as it is, and that there's way too much flexibility in there, and maybe we could, I don't know. I wanted to see if it was the will of the committee to keep working on it.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yep, discussion on that?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to keep working on it. Again, this was the product of a task force that went through a process that this committee didn't go through, right? So I think it is of benefit to have more people engaged and hear more feedback. When we worked on it, we did have the Community College Commission, the university. We had a robust working group putting their mind to it, trying to solve these problems. But I realized this was, short testimony, and we didn't hear a lot of direct testimony on this bill. It's pretty clear everybody wants the Hathaway increased, and there's a lot of concern about ACT, which is another great topic. But in terms of this bill itself, more time and more focus, Mr. Chairman, is certainly appropriate. So I support that motion for us to continue working on it.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Oh, yes, Representative Lawley.
Again, to the motion, I would support the motion again, but I would say again that I believe that the better vehicle might be Wyoming Tomorrow and retooling that a little bit. And just so that's on the table as we look at this as a possibility of achieving some of the same goals, all the same goals, but doing it not so much through the Hathaway, but through that. And it would need probably some reworking of that bill or that law to fit some of the things that Senator Rothfuss mentioned. But I would support that if we're more broadly look at other options for accomplishing the same thing.
Other discussion? Yes, go ahead, Co-Chair.
I just want to clarify that probably a voluntary working group would do, give the LSO drafting.
You're volunteering yourself, aren't you?
Yes, I think I am, but and maybe, hopefully, a few other people.
Yes.
Sounds good.
No, I think, Co-Chair, I think that's a really good idea, because I think ultimately most of us, I would say that most of us, we know that we haven't kept up with inflation, and we need to do that. And after looking at our endowment account and seeing, our earnings this last year were some of the largest we've ever had, we ended up with 18 more million going into that fund, and seeing how our earnings are really good, I think this is the prime time to take a look at that. And really, that's what we want to do is to make sure that we're doing the best we can to keep our kids in state, whether they're going to the community colleges or whether they're going to the University of Wyoming. So there's no other discussion. Oh, go ahead, Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just wondering too, if there's going to be a working group, if it would be appropriate to ask them to look at the ACT portion of this in that bill at this time. I can identify with those students who had good grades, bad test taker. That was completely me. So if that's appropriate, I would suggest that that be done too.
Okay. Senator Brennan, I think that's a great idea. Yes, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would say I do plan to make a motion when these other motions are off the table, but to have a bill draft concerning the amount of the awards and looking possibly at the issue of the testing. My concern is there's a substantial amount of evidence out there that testing is not as great of a predictor of success in college as we have attributed to it. So I'd at least like us to talk about that and have it maybe be an or situation rather than an and. But I'm planning to suggest a fresh bill draft on those two issues. So maybe we keep those together.
Okay. Yes. Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and vote on the co-chair's amendment? All those in favor of tabling this and installing some type of voluntary working group, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The same? Okay, that's passed. And I think the good co-chair, I think he's volunteered to chair that. So I hope some others will volunteer to help serve. Okay, Senator Rothfuss, Representative Lawley, we've already got 2 volunteers. If anybody else wants to, please reach out to the good co-chair. Anything else? And I guess if we've tabled it, we can go ahead and take a break. Oh, you want to go ahead?
Make my motion?
Sure. Go ahead.
I would just move that we ask LSO to do a fresh bill draft concerning the Hathaway to raise up the amount of the award. And, again, we probably may want to have a short discussion about what percentage we might aim at to raise it up to, but that we do that, and we basically, the ACT being not an and the grades, but or, that either of those factors could be looked at, but you don't have.
2 separate bill drafts?
Yeah. Yes.
LSO, did you get that? Or do you want to reiterate that? This would be separate from this lump sum.
Fresh bill draft.
But both of those concepts in the second bill draft, right? Not 3 bill drafts?
Or do you want them separate? Representative
I
Lawley?
thought we would do them all in one bill draft if we could. A fresh bill draft just relates to the amounts of the awards. Again, my mind, I'm thinking we should be at least at the 60% level, trying to raise it up to that. In my mind, that's just my view. The committee may have a different view, but on the awards side, but then that the ACT is an either or, like, it's not both and, like, you have to have a certain ACT score and grade level.
But Madam Chairwoman, both of those concepts in one separate bill, correct?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I support both of those bills, but I think those are both of those bills. Those need to be 2 different bills. Yeah, very different concepts.
Okay, so would you like to adjust that amendment or withdraw and start a new one?
How about I start over?
Just start over,
I
okay.
make a motion that we have 2 bill drafts, one concerning the amount of the awards and the other concerning the requirement of the ACT, not being an and requirement, but one of the things that could be looked at as qualification. Thank you.
Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The same? Okay, 1 no, that's all right. That has passed.
Madam Chair, just for clarification on the award amounts, you said 60%. Is that 60% of the tuition fees from the honors being covered at the University of Wyoming, or, so, we can bring back a bill draft with just, to be filled in by the committee at the November meeting. But there might be some research, or is there any research done that you want on, proposed amounts?
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do think we need a little more information to make the decision of the amount. So maybe we leave it blank and let you guys bring us some more information of what we should be looking at and at the different levels. So just when I was looking at the honors level, I was thinking, again, you see such a huge disparity of where it started, and we need, maybe not bring it fully to where it was, but at least a significant jump. So, but I do want to do it with care and caution, and always appreciate information. So maybe that in November, we could have that discussion and come to a conclusion.
You bet.
Are you
Mr.
okay?
Yeah,
Clarification?
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Representative Lawley, we'll work with the department and the commission and the university. I know in the past, there's been some desire to have the award amounts be divisible by credit hours of 15. So we'll collectively gather and bring some options for the committee at the November meeting.
Great. Anything else? All right, I think it's probably time that we take a little break. How about 10 minutes? Did we vote on that?
I don't think so.
We did, okay. All right.
We voted before we knew it was our.
Okay, there we go, I like that. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at about 10:44. Thank you.
like it's me and you.
Well, if we could go ahead and take our seats, since we're running behind schedule, we want to get started, so hurry back. Sometimes you feel like you're in a classroom. Okay. Okay, we're going to continue on with our agenda. Next up is we're going to take a listen to our experts, and they're going to talk a little bit about the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Program amendments, which just segues very nicely into what we just talked about. This is 26 LSO 0095. So we'll be bringing back Matt and Tanya. Welcome back. Who's going to start us off? Tanya? Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, again, Tanya Heitrick, Operations Administrator, LSO. This is a pretty straightforward, simple bill. It's 26 LSO 0095, Working Draft 4, Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Program Amendments. Recall at your last committee meeting, you requested a bill to eliminate the continuous enrollment for scholarship eligibility for this particular program. You'll note on the bottom of page 1, line 8, there's a single provision of statute repealed, Wyoming Statute 2116, 1904, C, Romanet 4. And the committee discussed whether amendments to session laws were required for the Kickstart program or an additional provision. And it's not required because twofold. One, it referred to the statute that we're repealing. And secondly, now that the endowment or the account is at $50 million, the expenditure account, I guess it is the endowment account, has reached the minimum balance of $50 million. Those statutes that were enacted will govern administration of the program rather than the session laws. So you can, sometimes we'll put the text of the repealer in, but because this was one provision, members can pull it up online if they so choose. So subject to your questions.
Questions for Tanya? The only question I had was when you mentioned that about the Kickstart, then the Kickstart just goes away. Is that correct?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, I believe that's correct. It was time limited. I believe it was in the budget bill. So certainly would be time limited to that period, and particularly where the account has reached the minimum balance.
Other questions about kicking out the continuous enrollment requirement? Senator Rothfuss, were you? No? Okay. No? Well, what an easy fix. When we say that it's a simple bill, usually that turns out to be a really complicated bill, and we end up being here a long time. But thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this bill? Come on up. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Micah Richardson. I'm with the Wyoming Women's Foundation. Our mission is economic self-sufficiency for women and opportunities for girls. And I just want to say thank you for thinking about this. We know that the majority of people who attend community colleges are women. And we also know a good chunk of those women have families and have children and have things that come up. So I think this bill is really supportive of allowing an opportunity for those women to continue when life arises. So thank you all for working on this. That's all I've got.
Any questions for Ms. Richardson? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? Okay. Anyone online? Ashley?
No, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Well, with that, committee, what's your pleasure with this bill?
Move the bill.
Okay, the bill's been moved by Senator Rothfuss, seconded by Representative Singh. Sorry, I wasn't sure who it was. I just heard a voice over there. Okay. Discussion on the bill.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just note, I think this is important. This provides the flexibility that this scholarship is supposed to be providing, and this is certainly an improvement to remove that continuous enrollment requirement.
Good point. Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, I had some problems with this particular bill. What we're repealing is a requirement remain continuous from enrollment for not less than 2 academic terms each successful academic year, with a provision that for waivers for, and it gives military service, religious service, other good cause. Madam Chairman, what I'm afraid of, if we just simply repeal this provision, is that we'll get money tied up with grants for students that really aren't making an effort to get the program done, and will prevent, we don't have enough funding in Wyoming Tomorrow yet to anywhere come close to meeting the need. So I'm afraid if we do this, we'll get a bunch of money tied up and won't be able to fund other students that really will need it and use it. There is on the provision above that is not repealed, on 3i, there's a meeting other criteria is established by the eligible institution to ensure student earns a degree or certificate in a timely manner. There is some effort there to try to solve that problem, but I really wonder if that's adequate. And I'd like some discussion on that particular point, and think maybe if we're going to repeal little 4, we need to amend 3i to give the institutions a little more push, a little more authority to keep us from tying up funds. So is this, if we pass this bill, are we likely to damage our ability to accomplish what the current funding will allow?
Yes, go ahead, Tanya.
Madam Chairwoman, Senator Scott, I would remind the committee that in addition to Romanet 3, there are 2 other provisions in subsection C that state to remain eligible for the scholarship under this section, the student must, 1, make satisfactory academic progress towards a degree or certificate by completing at least 2/3 of the attempted semester hours in any academic term. And then secondly, maintain a cumulative grade point average of at least 2.0 as evaluated at the end of each spring term. And then third, to your point, meet other criteria as established by the eligible institution to ensure the student the student earns a degree or a certificate in a timely manner. I think all 3 of those are relevant to your question, Senator Scott.
Other comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Scott?
And that's entirely right. And I'm not sure whether they all in combination get the job done. And if we were to introduce it as just a repealer, would that then eliminate our ability to amend those other provisions? Because the title would be just repealing. And I've seen that played either way over the years.
Tanya, can you answer that?
When you have a repealer and you find, oh, if we're going to do that, we really better modify this other provision.
Tanya, would you like to?
Madam Chairwoman, I would also remind the committee that the directive was to eliminate the continuous enrollment. It was not to modify any provision related to academic performance. And specifically to Senator Scott's point, the title of the bill is narrow, and that is because that was the directive of the committee, not to allow additional amendments to this particular program.
Other comments? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I agree, and I do think that Senator Scott is exactly right, that based on the way the title is and based on the way the bill is, it's simply a repealer bill, and you wouldn't have the ability to go back in and change those things. I think that's probably a feature, not a bug. This is a budget session. This is a relatively straightforward change that I think improves the program, and it might not be the best session to go in and rework the entire Wyoming Tomorrow scholarship program. So I see it the same way as Senator Scott, but I don't see that as a downside.
Other comments? Okay, Senator Scott, did you have a follow-up?
I would see, and I think I'm agreeing here that yeah, I would see it as limiting it to just this repealer, and the way it's written would give us trouble trying to amend it further. And I think we may need to amend it further to make it work. And I really wonder if it would be wise to put in some amendment, so there is the flexibility in the, modify the title, there is the flexibility to amend it, at least with regard to this particular issue. I have trouble, Madam Chair, frankly, I have trouble voting for the bill in its current form.
Other comments? Yes, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just would say I do support this bill. I think it really is consistent with the conversations we've already had about the different needs that students have in Wyoming. And the Wyoming Tomorrow is really kind of addressing the non-traditional student. And this helps that more. And we had testimony that I believe is true and accurate concerning women and some need, but it's not exclusively women. That we are trying to address people that have different life situations in which there may have to take a term off or a semester off and then come back. And it's just trying to not limit this where if they have to do that, they disqualify for the scholarship. So I actually think this really makes Wyoming Tomorrow better and fits the purposes of it originally. And I do support the bill.
Any other comments? Okay, are we ready to vote? All right. All those in favor of, oh, this is a roll call. Yes, it is. Thank you. Go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For 26 LSO 95, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program Amendments for Sponsorship, Senator Brennan. Aye. Senator Olson. Aye. Senator Rothfuss. Aye. Senator Scott.
No.
Representative Bratton.
Aye.
Representative Erickson.
Aye.
Representative Guggenmoss.
No.
Representative Kelly.
Aye.
Representative Lawley.
Aye.
Representative Singh.
Aye.
Representative Strzok.
No.
Representative Williams.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Andrew.
No.
Chairwoman Schuler.
Aye.
You have 10 aye, 4 no.
Okay, this bill is passed. We'll take a look at it. Not sure if it'll start in the House or the Senate, but we'll work on that later. Thank you. With that, we'll go on to the next bill, which is 26 LSO 0096, use of Hathaway scholarships at private institutions. And our resident experts, I think, will be back here shortly to give us some more information. Welcome back.
Madam Chairwoman.
Long time no see.
Members of the committee, Tanya Heydrich, Legislative Service Office Operations Administrator. While the last bill was simple, this one is not.
Too good to be true.
I know there was some discussion with the committee and perhaps some discussion that just eligible institution could be modified to include private post-secondary institutions. And that's not possible, not without significant rewrite of the existing Hathaway Scholarship. The Hathaway Scholarship is built on semester performance. The satisfactory academic progress is tied to semesters. The awards are tied to semesters, and potentially this scholarship could include entities like Wyotech. And in researching that, they operate on a 6-month or a 9-month basis. And so the satisfactory academic progress on a semester basis or an academic term basis doesn't work. And neither does the semester award. It's 9 or 6 equal payments. And so those two things are incongruent. And so instead of that, we created a different sort of scholarship, separate and apart from the Hathaway Honors, Opportunity, Performance, Need-Based, similar more to the scholarship that's now available to those students that attend school outside of Wyoming and graduate from a high school that's not a Wyoming school. There's some interrelation in the statutes. Of course, there's some conforming amendments that were required later in the bill, but I would note there are significant policy choices that need to be made in this bill for staff to draft it and finalize it. Those policy choices are noted on pages 2 and 3 and onto the top of page 4. I did a fairly significant amount of research on potential eligible colleges that would be perhaps recipients of these funds, including the Wyoming Technical College, the Frontier School of the Bible, Wyoming Catholic College, and each of those sort of operate separately and distinct, and they also have different tuitions as well, and the cost of attendance versus just tuition and fees varies. And so those are all things that this committee needs to consider and resolve in creating a bill draft that will operate appropriately. I'm not going to read through those comments. I kind of have highlighted some of those elements, but they are also noted throughout the bill draft in the appropriate location that you might wish to address them. With that, Madam Chairwoman, I'll start walking the bill. Section 1 on page 4, excuse me, creates 21-16-13-13. This is, as I said, creates the private post-secondary scholarship. The definition of private post-secondary school is required. Is it located in Wyoming? Is it accredited? Are they required to be certified? The Wyoming Department of Education does have a licensure program for private post-secondary degree granting institutions, but religious institutions that grant a finite list of degrees are exempt from those licensure requirements. And so will all of the schools receiving these funds be required to be licensed under those statutes, or do they dovetail with those? And there is an error on page 5, line 3, that statutory reference should be 21-2-407, not 21, 23, 407. But those are the statutes that govern the department's oversight currently of private post-secondary licensed degree granting institutions. Subsection B on page 16, lines 16 through 19. This provides that the award of scholarships is contingent upon available funds and anticipated revenues to the Hathaway expenditure account. And much of this language does mirror the Hathaway scholarship, except in instances where it's just not possible. And then subsection C on lines 21 through 26 states that it's utilized for the cost of attendance. That would include indirect costs such as housing, transportation, food, et cetera, not just tuition and fees. That's a policy choice for this committee to make, but I did want to point that out. Subsection D on page 5, line 27 through page 6, lines 13. This establishes the initial eligibility requirements, and it ties it to those that are relevant in the Hathaway scholarship, such as they are a Wyoming resident, they've completed the success curriculum, they're graduates from Wyoming high schools, or they have received a GED or completed their homeschool curriculum. The committee can go ahead and look at those. United States citizens, selective service, they haven't defaulted on a Title IV student loan. They're not incarcerated. They haven't been convicted of a felony unless there's exceptions, those types of things. All of those are policy choices. Each scholarship that you created, some of those are different in the Wyoming Works and the Wyoming Tomorrow, but you could certainly identify what population you were attempting to target through those eligibility requirements. In the event that they do differ, there are a couple of different ways to draft that. And then secondly, it sort of specifies that the Department of Education, will additionally establish qualifications for initial eligibility through rule and regulation. And then sort of another policy consideration is what are the academic requirements for eligibility? You were just discussing ACT and GPA, and each of those categories of the Hathaway Scholarship have varying requirements. The higher the scholarship, the higher the academic performance required. Are there tiered scholarships available to these private institutions similar to the Hathaway? Or is it a single amount based on a GPA and an ACT score? And also, do you want to include the CTE assessment that's available under the Provisional Opportunity Scholarship? That's also a decision point. And that's laid out in the staff comment on page 6, lines 14 through 24. And on the bottom of page 6, this states that it should be for the cost of attendance. No student shall be eligible for the Hathaway private post-secondary for more than the equivalent of whatever that amount is, the total amount, $7,200, or, the various scholarships have a cap on those. And then again, a minimum continuing eligibility requirements and reinstatement. The Hathaway Scholarship as it exists, if you fail to perform adequately for a certain tier of the scholarship, you may be eligible for a lower scholarship, depending on what scholarship you were initially eligible. So if you were initially eligible for the Hathaway Honors Scholarship, but failed to meet those satisfactory academic progress requirements, you could be eligible for a lower tier with lower satisfactory academic progress measurements. That would also be required, and this is the provision that you would specify that. The staff comment on the bottom of page 7 and onto page 8 identifies those questions specifically. Page 8, line 19 creates subsection F, and it goes on to page 11, line 13. This really creates the mechanics for the award, the documentation of the academic performance. The Department of Education is charged with determining the preliminary eligibility for each student through this. And the Department of Education is charged with certification to the state treasurer with the amount to be paid to each private institution. This differs a little bit from the traditional Hathaway Scholarship, where the Wyoming Community College Commission and the University of Wyoming are involved in those discussions, and it would require the Department of Education to work with each eligible institution to identify those students. And that's really page 9 on to page 10. And moving on, again, the success curriculum for receipt of the Hathaway private post-secondary school scholarship is required based on each specific scholarship if it were tiered. So consider that as well. And again, Roman 4, those are sort of the mechanics that I discussed previously. And again, on to page 11 as well. Subsection G on page 11, line 24 through page 12, line 3 requires reporting. This reporting aligns to the reporting required for the traditional Hathaway scholarships. Subsection 8, page 12, lines 5 through 8. This allows the Department of Education to audit schools that are receiving funds. This is the same as the Hathaway program. And then section 2, line 10, these are the amendments that I spoke of earlier to conform or dovetail the operation of this program into the traditional Hathaway scholarship. Most of these are conforming amendments, or they eliminate obsolete language. You can note that we've added the reference to the new statute there on pages 12 and 13. And then again, eliminated some obsolete language on the bottom of page 13. One thing I would draw your attention to as well, page 14, lines 1 through 13, is 80% currently under statute is available for the Hathaway honors performance opportunity and provisional, and then the remaining 20% is available for need-based scholarship. The funds to be utilized for this particular program are those within the 80%. Is it lessened to a different amount and a certain portion of the scholarship is only available to these schools? That's additional policy decision that you'll all need to make and provide direction on. On page 14, line 16 through page 15, line 10, this modifies the scholarship amounts. Again, it's just conforming amendments to ensure that that new statute is drawn in. Page 15, line 12 through page 16, line 15. It, again, is just a conforming amendment. And likewise on page 16, lines 4 and 5. Section 3 on the bottom of page 16, lines 17 through 20. This specifies that this scholarship will be available to students that graduate in school year 25-26 and each school year thereafter. The initial eligibility is a policy determination by this body as outlined in the staff comment going on to page 17, line 7. And section 4 on page 17, line 10, contains the effective date of July 1st of 2026. Subject to your questions, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee.
Questions for Tanya? Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, and I will have a question on page 14, the staff comment there. And let me say at the outset, Madam Chairman, I got my copy of the bill yesterday and frankly have not had time to fully understand it. So some of the questions may derive from that. And Madam Chairman, where I wanted to come out is I want us to get started down this road but I'm looking for some ways to simplify it and get our feet wet gradually in the process, as opposed to doing everything all at once. On page 14, the staff comment there, it's unclear to me, are we structuring this just to have the merit scholarships, the opportunity and honors and merit, the Hathaway honors, performance and opportunity scholarships? Or is this bill have a need-based component as well? And I'm just flatly confused on that, Madam Chair.
Tanya?
Certainly, Madam Chairwoman, Senator Scott, both of those are policy decisions for you all to make. Currently, under the existing Hathaway scholarship as it exists now pursuant to 2116-1302, 80% of the scholarship to be awarded is awarded for those merit-based scholarships that you mentioned: honors, performance, opportunity, provisional opportunity, and the remaining 20% is for need-based. So the first policy decision in that is this scholarship part of the 80%? Is this scholarship a bifurcation of that 80%? And then to your second question about need-based, that is also a policy decision of this body. I'm sure there's a staff comment somewhere in there that addresses that.
Follow-up, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, what I'm not understanding is the way this draft comes to us right now. Is it restricted to just the merit-based, or is the scholarship provided in this include a need-based component? And I'm confused on that.
Tanya?
Madam Chairwoman, again, that's a policy decision for you all to make. Senator Scott, certainly your staff can't make a decision about what portion of the Hathaway scholarship you'd like to utilize for this new scholarship, and we cannot make a policy decision about whether you'd like a need-based component to this as well.
Madam Chairman.
That guidance was not provided in the drafting instructions.
Senator Scott, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
I repeat the question. The way this is drafted, which way is it drafted? It's drafted one way or the other.
Tanya?
And
Yep.
is there a need-based component in the draft that is before us here?
Madam Chairwoman, Senator Scott, no.
Okay.
There is no designation about what portions to be utilized out of the 80%, nor is there a designation of whether a need-based scholarship is included. I'll find the staff comment relevant to that, but the one comment is at the top of page 14.
Other questions? Wow. Shocked.
I
Yes, did
found
you have
it,
some other
actually.
comments?
It's page 2, lines 26 through 28. Are students eligible for the Hathaway Needs-Based Scholarship pursuant to 2116-1306?
Any other comments? Yes, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess my comment is there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of decisions to be made that are this committee's decision. And it would be very difficult for me sitting here at this table, and I have read through all this when it was transmitted to us, but that to really make there's a lot of decisions to be made. So again, I would recommend some kind of a work group that would begin to work through some of these decisions, and of course then bring them back, and we can then debate, those possibilities as needed. But it just isn't really ready for much of any sort of committee decision, because these are all very valid points, and they're just decisions that need to be addressed and made as a matter of policy. So that would be my recommendation.
I was going to say, is that an amendment? Or is that just Yeah.
Actually, I would call it a
motion.
recommendation
Okay.
for the committee. I can say it as a motion if you'd like.
To table this and get a working
The
committee.
table, and yes, Madam Chairman, I will do it that way. To make a motion that we table it and get a work group together to kind of work on these issues. LSO has done a good job outlining the things that need to be addressed, and that is very helpful, and I do appreciate it greatly, but these are decisions we have to kind of work through and make, so.
Would this be a separate working group from the other one, or could they work together?
No, it would be a different work group.
Oh, that's right. We do have to have public comment first. Hang on to that. Okay, I forgot about that too. Yep, good point.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing.
So just remember that motion. Yes, Representative Straw.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my only question I have really, do we have scholarships for private schools? What is even available for them?
Private
From the state?
Scholarships,
From
the state?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So at that point, then I guess we'll open it up for, sorry, I got another question. Senator Scott.
There was some discussion on the constitutionality of this. And my question for the LSO, my reading of what you all provided is that we do have to pay attention to the appropriation has to go to an outfit that's under the absolute control of the state. And okay, that's something we know how to do, appropriate it to State Department of Education or Community College Commission or some other state entity. And then they would then fund the individual scholarships. But that as long as we comply with those constitutional provisions, my reading, Madam Chairman, is that it is constitutional and that there is no need to have a means test in here because the Constitution does specifically authorize scholarships. Is that a correct reading?
Madam Chairwoman, given the current litigious environment, if you'd like to discuss these conversations, I'm happy to do that, but I would request that you move into executive session.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I would be strongly opposed to that. I think the committee ought to discuss, the committee has an obligation to pass constitutional legislation. And I think we ought to be open to discussing that in public so the public understands our reasoning. I think the business of trying to hide from discussion of legal issues is very unwise.
Representative Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We're operating under a judicial fog right now. The most recent interpretation of Article 3 is, quote, "There's no dispute that the act appropriates funds for educational purposes to persons who are not under the absolute control of the state," regarding the ESAs that are being held up right now. We'd have to assume that that type of logic, if we were to expand Article 3 to that type of definition, that this would fall under that too, that these are funds being ultimately appropriated to entities not under the control of the state. So while I love this idea and I would support it, I think we're kind of spinning our wheels or chasing our tails right now until we understand exactly what the final decision is going to be made on the constitutionality of such programs. So I'm all for the working group to continue trying to perfect this idea and putting it on the back burner and move to issues right now that we have a clearer landscape ahead of us.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, this is higher education scholarships. The relevant constitutional provision here is Article 15, Section 20. Legislature may, from time to time, place monies in endowment funds for higher education scholarships and for improving the quality of higher education, which funds shall remain inviolate. The earnings of the funds shall be used for the purposes specified in this section. The legislature may from time to time regulate the manner in which the earnings are expended, et cetera. The scholarships for higher education are specifically constitutionally authorized, and that's an issue that is very different from the legislation that's got us in litigation. So I think that this is something that we perfectly well can discuss in public without prejudicing our standing on other things, because that provision is specific to these higher education scholarships.
Yes, go ahead, Representative, or let me go to Senator Rothfuss, I'll come back to you.
Oh, my
Representative
apologies.
Kelly.
Go ahead. You're following up.
Okay, Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just have to say that I agree with Senator Scott's interpretation. I'm just merely pointing out, it appears that right now the courts do not agree with that. And until the dust settles there, that we are not going to decide that here.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. And you know, I disagree with Senator Scott on it. I do think that Article 15, Section 20 is a part of the consideration, but it doesn't say anywhere in Article 15, Section 20, and now you don't have to obey the rest of the Constitution. We didn't mean any of that. So 16 is still there, 16.6. And one thing that I do want to point out that actually is different from the ESAs, which I know my good friend, the senator, thought that was constitutional also when he voted for that. This money is school foundation program account funds. I don't know if everybody, I know Senator Scott knows that because he knows the source of it was taking a surplus of school foundation program account funds, investing those into the original Hathaway account. That's where those were sourced. Well, I'd look to Senator Scott for a different answer. He's shaking his head, but it was my understanding that the original seed money for the Hathaway were school foundation program account funds. And I think you mentioned even in your speech a little earlier, there was a surplus of those funds. So perhaps there's a laundry story that I'm not familiar with.
Senator Scott?
It was enabled because there was a surplus in the school foundation. What they did, and I'm pretty sure my recollection is correct on this, and it took them a while to work it out. They were scared to take money out of the school foundation program to fund the Hathaway. So they intercepted a bunch of the flows into the foundation account to fund the Hathaway and let the foundation account work off its original thing. And the flows they intercepted were not funds that were constitutionally dedicated to that. They were statutorily dedicated, but not constitutionally dedicated. So they never got into the school foundation account. It's bookkeeping, but it's bookkeeping with some legal significance. So these are funds that were not necessarily dedicated to education. They were statutorily dedicated, that were flowing into that account. They intercepted the flows, and that built the endowment. And they were able to do that because there was a surplus there, so they could do it without jeopardizing what they needed to spend out of the school foundation account. It was a skillful piece of work, and it drove some of us that were sponsors of the bill just wild until we figured out what they were doing. But they did it quietly because they were afraid other people might come raiding on their own. There's an interesting history there, Madam Chairman.
Other discussion from the committee? Okay. With that, let's go ahead and open it up for the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to testify on this? Please come forward. Thanks for reminding me, both of you. I was just trying to hurry. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Kyle Washut, the president of Wyoming Catholic College. I won't give long testimony since this is likely going to a working group and there's lots of questions. Just want to say that I'm happy to make available whatever research or whatever work my team has done on this for the working group as they have questions. In no way do I claim to be a constitutional scholar for the state of Wyoming in regard to these very difficult questions on the appropriation. My advisors have noted it certainly seems to be the case that the state of Wyoming has done creative things with funding, for example, St. Stephen's School on the reservation, or with appropriating funds to the Child Development Center, which are explicitly teachers, but are not under absolute state control. Whatever those, I realize those are different circumstances, but interested in pursuing other options or creative solutions on that front. Scholarships, again, on the model of from the Department of Ed directly to students, whatever the case may be. And also just reiterate that we're dealing with a small but significant portion of the students that we're looking at in Wyoming. If we're looking for WyoTech and Wyoming Catholic, currently the only ones with regional accreditation, realizing that's a policy decision still to remain, we're talking about a very small portion of students who are otherwise leaving the state to go to other out-of-state private institutions. We're not principally competing with our community colleges or the University of Wyoming in this regard to either of our institutions. So at any rate, looking forward to further discussion and just happy to make available whatever questions or answers we can offer. Thank you.
Kyle, what was your last name again?
Washut.
Washut. Is there any questions for Mr. Washut? Okay, thank you for the offer. Appreciate your testimony. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify today on this topic? Okay, well, with that, no one online for this one?
No, Madam Chairman.
They're all lining up for literacy, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. What is the will of the committee? Mr. Co-Chair?
Madam Chairwoman, I move that we table this bill until the November meeting to allow time for a working group, which I will volunteer to chair as well, to answer the significant amount of questions that are reasonably within this draft and try to come to something that is a complete bill draft at the direction of that committee that we can vote on.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Representative Lawley seconded. Discussion. Yes, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, I'm very supportive of this motion. Let me make some suggestions that maybe we can talk about. I think that we ought to get into, this is the direction we ought to go. I think it will be easier to pass and safer to pass if we go down this road gradually rather than trying to do it all at once. And so let me make several suggestions, maybe the committee can discuss a bit. First, I think in ensuring constitutionality, we need to have the appropriation go to a state entity. I'd suggest the State Department of Education. And then they could award the scholarships, which are clearly authorized in 1520. They can award the scholarships to individuals. That's how scholarships work. So that's within the language of 1520. The private institutions that would be, students could attend with the scholarships, would have, I think, should be restricted initially. That's one way to simplify things. Requiring regional accreditation would be a way to do it. I think we could probably work out language that would do that. I think we ought to avoid getting into the need-based ones. Those are much more complicated, and you then have to worry about how much the institution charging and all that sort of thing. So I would suggest we restrict it to the various merit-based scholarships. there's several other ways you could narrow it, but the regional accreditation may be the best way. And the other institutions potentially could get accreditation eventually. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I think with those things, you can put together a piece that really does meet the constitutional requirements, because we have to pay attention to those, but recognize that you don't need the means test, because, you know, we've never used a means test that I know of. It was proposed, I guess, but at one point, but education traditionally has not had a means test to it. It's a basic function of the state government, so it's not a donation. And specifically, that's true where these scholarships are specifically constitutionally authorized. So, Madam Chairman, that's my suggestions in terms of simplifying the bill.
Okay. Are you saying, Senator Scott, you'd like to work on this working group?
I'm not particularly looking for the work, but I'd be willing to. This one's important.
I think you've got some ideas there that maybe that working group would love to have, so. Anyone else? Any other comments? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, and you know, I think going the same path and having a group take a look at it is appropriate, but one of the things that I'd ask that group to think about is the competition for funds, where we have another bill, and that other bill is trying to increase the amount of money available for Hathaway scholarships. This should be looked at as a trade-off against that, because we will have a limited amount of additional available funding that we can allocate. And so any dollars that end up being captured by an expansion of availability to the private sector is going to take away from what can be given out. I think it's important to recognize that. So as that conversation goes forward, I think it's important to have that as well. And the final point that I'd ask a working group to give some thought to, if this motion goes forward, is the idea that under the current system, you know, we do interesting things with money, obviously, in the state of Wyoming, the way we end up funding educational institutions. Well, since Hathaway has come around, this has been the equivalent of about $16 million of state funds going to our colleges and the university. And it goes through an interesting little circuitous route, and it's linked to an individual student, but at the end of the day, you've got $16 million of state funds from the Hathaway endowment going through the system to our colleges and the university. Well, we're literally obligated to fund the university, and we've taken on the obligation of funding the colleges, and that's something that I think we all value and want to continue to do. I think it's important to realize that if we shift money, so we either have to increase or shift away from the $16 million. If you take away from the $16 million, then that is money that the state was previously using to pay the bills at the college and the university that will not be there anymore. So we'll probably have to look for additional funding somewhere else. Or alternatively, we end up just cutting those funds. So, you know, as you're thinking through the structure of how this might proceed, and I just urge to understand the true complexity of how these funds get used, and it is that they're part of the budget of the colleges and the university at this point in time. If they are constitutionally provided in some way to the private sector, then those are out of the state system, and so it would be tax revenue going to pay for the operations of a non-state facility that otherwise would have gone to the operations of a state facility. And I think it's important to take that into consideration, because there'll be other budgetary implications to it.
Other comments? Yes, Senator Scott?
For Senator Rothfuss. Points well taken, I think. If we want to go down this road gradually, one way to do it without having a big fiscal impact would be to, in these things, restrict it to schools that are offering the four-year degree, not have it available for the certificate programs for the lesser, for some of the work certificate things and that sort of thing, where you could get much larger numbers. And is that something the working group ought to consider, do you think? What's your feelings on narrowing it that way?
Madam Chairman, I don't know. I haven't given thought to narrowing it in that way. My first inclination is, at that point, you're literally discriminating against different business models in the private sector, and I don't know why you would do that. Having a cap on the specific amount that anybody could apply, which is what we have currently in statute for the different tiers, the capitation would seem more appropriate. The hardship side, which again was asked by Ms. Heitrek, contemplating that, eliminating that entirely from consideration would probably, that would be a significant cost savings endeavor and would be clear. So if you didn't have the honors level hardship program available, that would be an initial cost savings, because that, while it's a relatively small number of students that utilize it, the price per student ends up being relatively high. If you use the same formula as Ms. Heitrek indicated, it could be $30,000 or $40,000 per year per student. So that would be a struggle. So if I were to make that suggestion, it would be some type of a cap and not utilizing that, because I can see for Wyotech in my community as an example, paying $30,000 of their $40,000 on behalf of the state based on the formula. It would actually be $38,000, I think, if it's $40,000 is the tuition. And don't quote me on that. That's not exactly right. I can't remember what the tuition right now is for Wyotech, but it would be less $2,000 of that going to the student for a year. So that's the place that could potentially get into the most trouble in terms of the total cost, is the hardship honors level that I encourage to look at. But limiting it by, which type of college does get you into the, well, why did you pick our business and not allow this business? And I would see that as undue discrimination.
Other comments? Well, I would just also suggest with this working committee, again, we're putting a lot of this on the co-chair, to take a look at, just even if we slow roll this, if it does go through, maybe a cap on students, even the number of students in the first year or two. But that's just my thought. Yeah. Go ahead.
And that actually gets to, I'm probably not, I wouldn't be very excited about it regardless of how this goes, but if I were just putting on my hat on and trying to figure out how to do this best, I wouldn't use the Hathaway. I'd create something like Wyoming's Tomorrow or something along those lines. I think one thing that I certainly took away from Ms. Heitrek's presentation of the bill was this did not fit very well into the Hathaway. But that doesn't mean you couldn't write a piece of legislation where you took the concept, built it out, called it a different name, made it standalone, and then put the right feature set for some type of private scholarship in that, and then fund it through the general fund appropriately and let it stand alone. That's an idea. Again, I'd still vote no, but so you might not want to listen to me. But in terms of just drafting and how it would fit well with statute, we did that with Wyoming's Tomorrow for a similar reason, right? It made more sense. We did it with a lot of the other programs we put together because Hathaway doesn't necessarily fit all of the other needs. And this seems like another one where it doesn't quite fit.
All right, with that, I think we'll put co-chair in charge of both of those if you'd like to volunteer for them. And I'll fill in to wherever you need me on either side. But obviously, I think we have lots of questions that need to be answered. So with that, do we have any other discussion on the amendment? You did make the amendment, didn't you? I haven't forgotten, have I? Oh, the motion, excuse me, not the amendment. All right, with that, let's go ahead and vote on the amendment. Excuse me, the motion. I didn't eat today. Can you tell? I'm starting to get angry. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same? Okay, that motion has passed. So any questions from LSO on what we need?
No, Madam Chairwoman, we'll be in touch
Okay.
with potential dates for working groups, and, we'll allow you all to get together and then provide us instructions once those conversations and decision points have happened.
Okay. And please reach out to the co-chair, and if you're interested in volunteering, and like I said, I think these are both things that, both bills have some real merit if we can figure out ways to incorporate them and make them constitutional and feasible budgetarily. So with that, all we had was higher education, and I don't know, looks like you're still here, some of you. Any of you guys have anything else to add from higher ed? Are you good? Okay, looks like Ms. Taylor's left too, so I think we're really ready probably for lunch, but unless there's something I'm missing. Again, I haven't eaten today, so. Yeah, please, I should have eaten. All right, with that, we're ahead of schedule. I want to make note of that. So it's 11:45. Is an hour okay, or do you want to go an hour and 15? Hour and 15. We'll be back in an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you.